Did you have any awareness of Phil or his brother or the whole fraternity back in the day?
No, no. That's the thing, really. You know, I mean, a lot of that music passed me by. You know, the Canterbury scene, Matching Mole, all the bands that came out of that, and all the bands that Phil had. You know, In Cahoots and all the other stuff. You know, I was more into the American stuff, really. You know, and always have been, you know, be it, you know, the early soul stuff, Stax and Atlantic, through to Coltrane, a lot of jazz, you know, even though I've sort of played in more poppy type situations, you know, that's been my real interest. And so a lot of that music passed me by. And it was quite interesting, that concert we did at the Vortex recently, for the simple reason that I hadn't heard any of these players before, you know, and it was nice to be, in a way, accepted into that situation, you know, as a, I suppose, as a relative outsider, you know, but it did give me a wider view of what had been going on in this time, in terms of the history of, what will we call it, progressive rock, jazz, whatever, you know. I'd worked with Mark in a band called Venus Edge, which was a four-piece, Mark, alto, flute, tenor, Jack on bass, myself on drums, and a pianist who was writing the material as well. We recorded a couple of albums, and so it was a strange mix of getting together with Jack and Mark and of course Phil. So I'd never worked with Phil before, and we turned up, had a few plays, rehearsals here. We were doing a cross-section of material at the time. Some of Mark's tunes, some of Jack's tunes, and some of Phil's tunes. We did 2 gigs. I think we did one in Stoke Newington, and then we did a gig up in Bishop Stortford, near the big house up there. It was an outside thing, and of course that was really Phil's last gig. Then sadly, you know, Phil got ill, and he rang me. It might have been in his last week, and it was very touching for me because he thanked me for my input. You know, you don't with a lot of musicians, you know, ego comes into it, and of course Phil had no ego. You know, he was into playing, he was into creating, and a wonderful player. You know, I just wish that I'd have met him earlier, like Steve really, and that we'd have done more things, because, you know, with Phil's material, and I'm not a reader, you had to sort of let the music develop in its own way, you know, and Phil gave me that space, and a lot of people wouldn't do that, you know. So that's really all I can tell you, you know. I know of players that worked with Phil a long time, you know, in different bands and so on. And so I guess I'm the sort of later apprentice of coming into this situation, you know. But still I did get a lot out of it. Some of the time changes he was playing, you know, I hadn't played before. And that opened out a lot of things for me as a drummer, you know. I mean, you have to know about timing, you have to know about different sequences and so on. So, you know, we were getting comfortable with that situation, you know. I think if we'd have had maybe half a dozen more gigs and a few more months together, we would be cracking it, as they say. You know, it would be quite an experience, you know. But having said that, it was a wonderful experience working with Phil, and that's something I'll never forget.